We're gonna do an all grips edition of hand quizzes, man, because hosted him yesterday, and he was very cool. I got to tell him, hey man, uh, I got to tell him, hey man, really appreciate you, yada yada, whatever. He was cool. Gave me the shout out, gave me the follow. Love grips, and he does make great content. Evan Jarvis. So let's go ahead and start these hand reviews. Start out with King Jack. We're going to go from earliest in tournaments to latest. Hopefully that'll be more cohesive than normal. So we see a raise on the button. We go ahead and 3-bet. This is one where we did this because the player raised super quick. I just 3-bet it after a couple seconds. I just wanted to point this out. You can 3-bet these good hands but not great hands from the blinds, and I think it's a mistake a lot of people make when they don't. I just wanted to throw this in there. Like, there's nothing really fancy to this. It doesn't go very far. Like, it's just over. But those little pots, man, add up. You know what I'm saying? We just were able to pick up when we could have just called, and then what? We're just gonna check call, check raise, or whatever. Like, if you're playing a hand like King Jack offsuit, you'd rather have control of the hand and the ability to make the other player fold than just kind of trying to make a hand. I mean, I never want to try to make a hand to win unless it's a monster. All right, let's see here. This is one of the early hands. It's pocket queens. I don't know why I'm highlighting this one. Let's find out. So we see raise out of early position. We're very early in the tournament. We're both super deep stacked. It's probably like round 1 or 2. Player raises. I go ahead and re-raise to a big size. He calls. I remember this hand. Flop comes off Jack 10 deuce. All good. He checks. I went ahead and bet, and this is my bad sizing bet, right? So if I was to c-bet this without something, and I was trying to bluff the player off, this would be a bad size. Like, a good size would be polarized. It would be either 6 big blinds or 14 or 15 big blinds, right? Like, I'd either be wanting to kill the pot with ace jack, 15 big blinds, get the fuck out of here, or I'd want to be like, man, I have a standard c-bet, man. You don't know what I have. I might have a monster. I probably have aces, right? I'm betting 6 big blinds. We're going to have to find out on the turn, but you can't fold. No, 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 no. I just took those 2 great ideas and went, I want to get called here 100% of the time. Boom! Right in the middle of them. Nobody knows what the fuck that means. So, of course, he does call. The turn comes off. Now, I want you to be aware, he's still got 85 blinds left, and we want it all, right? So, he checks. At this point, I actually said on stream, I think I'd like to do a little geometric betting. What that means is it's coordinating the size of your bets so that your opponent can be all in on the river, and it's not ridiculous. When is it not ridiculous? Well, it's not ridiculous when there's 50 blinds in the pot, and your opponent has 50 blinds left. That's a 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio. So you're trying to work SPR into making sense to get your goal. Now, the way you get there is different. So in this scenario, let's say I didn't want him to call a river. I was 3-barreling. I would have bet smaller on the flop, much bigger on the turn, and then jam the river. It's the same number of chips, but it's coming off differently, right? It's coming off much differently. So he checks the turn, and I go ahead and bet just over half pot. This is kind of, as my wife would say, persnickety. This is kind of, I could have just bet half pot, but I didn't want to make it, or I could have just bet 2/3 pot, but I didn't want to make it that easy. I did this to guarantee the call, right? I don't even feel like I'm up against a flush draw here. Like, why would I be? Like, he's not going to just call that half pot bet on the flop with a flush draw, right? That's going to invoke a lot of check raising. So I feel like I'm up against one pair. I really do. So I make this bet, and you'll notice here, after he calls, there's now 77 blinds in the pot. He has 66 left. It's not unreasonable to get all the money in with ace jack here if you're him and you've played the hand to this point. I would not play the hand this way to this point. I would have check raised that flop with the ace jack. When I got jammed on, I'd be out of there. I'd have probably lost about 20 big blinds in this pot, whereas he's already got 30 in, and we're trying to get the rest. He checks the river. I take a couple seconds, and then I just jammy ram. Now, there's a difference between jamming here and putting him all in, right? If I bet 66.02 blinds, It seems very, first of all, dickish. Players will fold to it. But if I jam, it looks more like one, I'm saving everybody the pageantry, and two, it looks more polarized. Like if I even if I bet 2/3 pot here, it's not great, right? It's not great for him. He's probably going to call it with ace jack, but I think if you jam, it looks weaker. So we want the call, and we see that we were able to work in his entire stack with second pair. In what planet are you getting all the money in? 105 big blinds with second pair. It's when you think you're getting bluffed. So using that bad bluff size is the move, right? It's obviously the move. It works great. I invite you guys to try it. It takes some balls because you realize you're not following somebody else's narrative of the way that they play hands. You're creating your own narrative by having total control. It's very scary. It takes a while to feel comfortable with it, but I do this all the time. And I love doing it because we're really getting called because bad players call when they're confused. Good players fold. All right, here's a good one. I don't know if it is a good one. I haven't reviewed these yet. So we raise out of second with an ace, suited ace. I think it's reasonable. We have 34 blinds. That's fine. A player with 28 blinds here calls. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it, right? A player with, I guess he started the hand with 25 big blinds, raises. This is kind of scary. Oh, sorry, my alarm went off. God damn it. This is kind of scary because he should kind of want to get the money in. If I have aces here and I'm him, I'm going to just rip it because I'm trying to look weaker. Either that or I'm just going to bet half my stack. I think this raise, because it's not even a proper raise, right? A proper raise would have been about a pot size bet. That's about 9, right? So it's like 2, 4, 5.5, 6.5, plus R2, 8.5 added to the call. So it's 10.5 would be the standard 3 bet for pot size. And at that point, he'd have only 15 behind. I think that's reasonable, even with aces. I think you do that. I think backing off the bet makes you look stronger. That's just my comment on that. But there was more to this hand. So I called it. I can definitely take a call here, even out of position, just because of the size of my stack and the fact that we were mid-range stacked, but this was at a point in the tournament where I could re-enter. So I was a little below starting. It's like the best flop in the world for me, obviously. Even versus 2 opponents, I have 65% equity. I want to show their actual... Well, no, I don't want to show their actual hands. So I check. This player checks. This is the funny part. Dude jams all in. This is what we want. This is why you bet big pre-flop. Because if he had bet that 10.5 big blinds, I'm not calling it with the ace-5. I'm just not. But now I'm just never folding, right? I know what he has. I said at the time he's probably got kings or aces here. And the other guy behind, I figured him for some kind of other overpair. And he made the worst play of all. He sat there and called my raise, this guy's raise, and then his jam after I re-jammed. So he made the worst play of all with pocket sixes. It was what he had. And, you know, he got there, but he had exactly 6 outs to win. And the other player did have pocket kings. So, you know, me going into it, I have 2 5s, 2 aces, all the hearts, all the deuces. This guy has, you know, versus this player. This dude just can't get away from a pair. And this was deep, man. Like, I remember after it happened, I was like, why would he do that? He had a good average stack. Why would you even go further here? Like here's the thing. If on the flop, let's say, right, I checked and then he bet, I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of, let's say this player had ace king, right? Let's just say. And he wanted to get raced with, but he didn't. So if I have the 6s here, I think my only play, if I know I'm not going to fold and I'm planning on re-entering, is I'm going to go ahead and bet this flop for about 7 or 8 big blinds. And then when this player jams with the kings, This player's going to fold. I mean, in this exact scenario, I don't think I'm folding, but he's going to fold about 90% of his hands because you just don't have equity to continue. In this one, we have all the equity, so we're continuing. But normally, 99.9% of the time, this guy's going to fold. And then I only have 14 big blinds left, and there's going to be his 18 plus my 7, 25, 28. There's going to be 48 blinds left with an open-ended straight draw where I'm most likely not up against a flush draw, and if I am, I'm ahead. That's a much better play. I priced myself into playing correctly. His move of jam, rejam, it cost him 21 to win 21 plus 18, 29, 39, we'll say 40 plus that, 43, 63. It costs him 21 to win 63. In that scenario, if all of his straight outs are live, then he's good to make the call, but you can definitely be assured you're up against a flush draw. Plus, somebody could have a set, so you could be, so they could have a redraw against you or flush draws. The only cards you really know that are good for you in this scenario are the deuce or 7 that isn't a heart. There's only 6 of those left, so you only have like 24% equity. Like, because you don't even know if a 6 is good, because some people will go apeshit. Now, more than likely a 6 is good for you in this scenario, but I'm just saying sometimes people go apeshit, right? Like, somebody could have the, A7 suited, and then that's a gut shot in the heart draw, right? And then you're just dead when the 6 comes off. So I think he made the biggest mistake. All that being said, I love the way I played it. I'm happy that I went down that way. And sometimes this is why I hate Sundays, man. You just end up on landmines. It's just bad players doing bad things that make for bad times. Hey, what's up, Rick? Rekmux? How you doing? And Corin, how you doing? We'll move on to the next one. This one's interesting, I think. 2.5 big blinds. I remember this hand. We got 3-bet, and it's not small. We're deep, but we're the chip leader, right? Like, we have way more chips. This is early on. We've doubled up early, and we get a big 3-bet, which this is pretty standard, right? From the small blind, I like betting bigger rather than smaller. So standard pot size bet would be 250, 350, let's say 450, 5, 6, 7, plus our call, 750, 850, 950. So 950 would have been a full-size pot bet. But I like 8. I think it's nice. It's one of those numbers that seems bigger, Like how 10 seems so much bigger than 9, or seems so much, like more money than $9.99. Okay, so the flop comes off, and it's Brick City, baby. He checks, and we're going to go ahead and check behind, because when a player 3-bets pre-flop and then checks a flop that's this, whatever, like, he's usually not having, like, draws here. Usually he's like, when you're doing that out of the small blind, you're going to have king-queen a lot. I think it is proper to check king-queen. A lot of players don't. The turn comes off a 4. We pick up some open-ended equity. We even have a gut shot to the absolute nutter butter. He checks again, and at this point, I'm setting up a bluff on the next street. This bet is kind of weird because I didn't want to bet monstrously, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to bet on the low end of my real bet range. So my real bet range here on most turns is going to be about 2/3 pot. Excuse me. Which would be like what? What's 18 divided by 4? What is that? 9, 4.5 times 3. So 12, 13.5, right? Is about 3/4 pots. So I guess this is right around 2/3. But I remember backing off the bet and going, you know what? I want to bet smaller here and make a bigger bet on the river. I could have just bet like 14 just to do a kill pot bet. But I felt like there's a lot of times where he does have a draw, like with some equity, like maybe a hand with 2 diamonds, and he's not going to fold anyway. So why not? Why not give him a bad price to draw and make a little more money and then protect ourselves when he hits? So, but he just folds, and I think it was just a well thought out bet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if he has ace king here. It's kind of good if he has ace king because I'm gonna have a lot of queens in my range. Yeah, I think he went into it without a plan. I think this is a scenario where he's relying on the cards. All right, 7s. So you raise and a call. I call, obviously, out of the small blind. There's no need to 3-bet here. All right, kind of a nothing flop that we're gonna win a lot. We see a way too small bet. If you're gonna bet as the three prop, if you're gonna C bet as the pre-flop aggressor into multiple opponents, you kind of gotta not change too much. Like, are you betting this little with aces here? I don't fucking think so, man. Like, unless you're trying to goat a check raise. So, I think your bet here into two players is just like 3.2, like somewhere a little over quarter pot or 1/3 pot, because I think you want to kind of like say, hey, I actually do have something. And then if you get raised, it's like, all right, they must be raising me with something. Maybe I can fold. So I go ahead and just smooth call it. Queen of diamonds hits the turn. It's not a great card for us, but it can definitely be a bad card for him. I can have all the draws. I can have all the 10 jacks. I can have all the queen, or all the diamonds. I can have all the like queen 9 hands. I can even have like things like jack 9, queen 10. I can have all the hands that this queen diamond is good for, and he really can't have them. You know what I'm saying? Not by his betting structure on the flop. The river comes off a 9, and this is kind of good for me, right? Because now it's like there's a flush out there, there's a straight out there, there's these trip 9s out there, and we went check check on the turn, which means I could be trapping. So what I did is I went ahead and bet 8.63, and what I'm doing here is I'm pretty much representing a 9 or a straight. I think a flush I personally would overbet, but this is one where I'm betting because I don't want to check check and get shown a pair of 10s. You know what I'm saying? Like where he bet the flop small and then the queen hit the turn and he decided, all right, I'm might be beat here. This is a really scary board. And then the river comes off and he's like, well, I can't really bet for value. And then we get checked at and we just, we're just fucked. Or he could have a hand like ace 8 of clubs and like have an 8, you know what I'm saying? Like something weird. He could have had like, a weird opener like that. He doesn't have to have a strong range. But this is kind of I'm betting because for you to call this, you have to have some of the good stuff. You got to have flushes, you got to have 9s, you got to have full houses, you got to have straights. You really can't call this bet with one pair because the board is so fucking scary. So I don't know if I'd call here with ace queen unless I'm holding no diamond, because then it's a better bluff spot. Like if I was holding the ace of diamonds here, although it's out of the blind, so that doesn't really apply, but it is a factor. If I had the ace queen with the ace of diamonds and the hand had played this way, it wouldn't have, by the way. But if it did, I think I'd be very reluctant to call because I would have the nut blocker. Plus, I can have random 9-8, right? I can absolutely have random 9-8, and have gotten in the river this way. But yeah, it's just a straight value bet, and he folds. I don't think in the end he had much, but I think it's important to bet those. That's why I wanted to include this one. You don't want to lose a showdown having played perfectly to a guy who had a better bad hand. You know what I'm saying? Who had a less good hand as you. What's up? Hey man, sorry I couldn't stay longer on Saturday. What have you been up to in the last couple years? What's up, Hazard? Everything's great, Hazard. I've been... I played poker for a while, and then I had some problems, went broke, and started driving Uber. It was outside of poker financial problems. Just life happens. Big expenses. We had a fire. All that shit. Anyway, then I was driving Uber full time out here in Vegas. A lot of fun. I love doing it. I did over 10,000 rides. The only problem with it was I really didn't have much time to play poker. So for about a year and change, I just stopped trying to play because I'm kind of an all or nothing guy. So if I can't play a sufficient amount of poker a week to make a difference in my life, I'd rather just study poker. And because it's frustrating to I got to play poker, yesterday and play some MTTs and cashed in a few, or I got to play some cash. I was kind of bitter, Then the pandemic hit, and I was out driving Uber at that time. I heard the presidential order. Being from Florida, I know what that meant, so I just went to a bunch of grocery stores before I went home. It was almost a riot at a few of them to get water and stuff. It was a really bad scene. but I got what I could and I came home. And then we were on lockdown. And I'm off the road, obviously, because of this crazy virus. And, you had to driving Uber is a good job, but you have to put in a lot of hours. It takes a lot of time. So, like, you might even put in 30 hours of actual drive time in the app, but it takes like 50 hours a week because you have to go from place to place to place, between rides and shit. Maybe 40 and 50. So, I wasn't like stacked up with cash. And we had just paid rent early. And I said, you know what, I got $100. We don't know how long this is going to last. And I got on ACR and started playing tournaments again. About 4 days into the pandemic, I won a $10 tournament and gave me $1,000. And I started grinding full time again because I had all the time, none of the money and distractions, right? So I started paying the bills again with poker, playing MTTs on ACR. And then, and it was like 6 months before any assistance came in, 5 or 6 months. So we were super in debt. I got a lot of help from my family. Obviously, I couldn't fade all that with such a small bankroll. But when the assistance came in, we kind of caught up. And this is just a story of how we became Qui-Gon broke, really. And the assistance came in, and I could then support the household with what I was winning in poker. Problem was, I couldn't build because I needed all the money, right? Which is a situation I've been in before where I've had a bankroll to play, but not enough to sustain losses. So for about 10 months, that went on. And then, about a month and a half ago, I broke even for a month. And if you're winning a certain amount of money every month and taking it to pay bills, and then 1 month you break even, well, you're broke. Because now you have to use whatever bankroll you have to pay rent. So that's what happened. And I was like, well, the assistance is going to end in a few weeks. I'm not going to be able to cover bills after that. I know all the facts about the Delta variant. I know that Vegas is one of the, outside of Florida, we're the second worst spot in the nation to catch Delta. But I've been vaccinated. I'm healthy. I'm relatively young. All my numbers always come back good. I go to the doctor several times a year. I guess we got to do what we got to do, man. Got to pay rent because we're out here on our own. We're fucked. And then I was talking to my dad about it, and he's a retired doctor, pediatrician. And that's why I know all the real numbers from CDC and JAMA and all like that is because I have access to the stuff he does. And he knows it too, obviously, even though he's retired. He's been consulting, actually, on some child risk management things. But anyway, we went out for a bar mitzvah last month. It's the first time I'd seen my family in 2 years. And it was really emotional. But I was talking to my dad one day, and he said, so what are you going to do? Because he knows the benefits are going to run out. And I said, well, I'm going to drive Uber. And it was just us. And he goes, isn't there something you can do online to, like, make money? And I said, yeah, I was doing it for another, for over 10 months here, Dad. And he goes, well, not poker. And that just, like, crushed my soul. Like, that really hurt me. Like, he was talking about streaming and stuff like that, but I hadn't streamed in 4 years, man. And I told him, I said, I'll go back to it and stream. That's kind of my plan, but that's going to take a while to build. So in the meantime, I'm going to be driving Uber. And he's like, I don't like that. And I'm like, the only other skill I have is dealing poker, and that's way more exposure. So I left kind of mad because he didn't get it. I'd never really gotten the support with poker that I needed. Like, my parents have always supported me, emotionally, and, they've never let me, like, be homeless. But, they didn't like it. And it's funny because my grandmother, she's the one who taught me how to play poker originally, and she was a hustler, man, her whole life. And it was very shameful back then, especially for women, especially for a Jewish woman. But she basically paid her way through college playing poker. Like, it's fucking crazy. But she instilled this very strict Orthodox background in my dad, and made him averse to gambling. I don't know why. Nothing in the Bible about not gambling, right? Nothing in the Torah. But I guess it kind of translated that way to non-virtuous. But my dad always liked the seedy shit. Like, I was a pool player. Like, I was a pool player, growing up. from the time I was 11, I walked into a pool hall. I didn't walk out until I was 24 or 23. And in that time, I practiced and I got really good. And I was in it until I got hurt. And I really thought that's what I was going to do for a living. But, then I tore my rotator cuff in the gym. Just a freak accident. Machine fucking slipped. And he liked that, but he never liked the idea of me being in the seedy places that you have to be in, like pool halls. You know what I'm saying? And casinos kind of fall under that same kind of, whatever. And even though this is online, it's still gambling, but he doesn't get the gambling. That it's not gambling. So anyway, so we get back here, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I got the car certified. I detailed the car myself. I had to get it re-inspected for Uber. I got the AC fixed because that went out like 2 days after we got back from Colorado. Like, I just put everything all into the car to do Uber, right? I went out. I drove a few nights, or a few days, trying to stay to locals, double mask, the whole thing. My third day, I was getting ready to go out that Friday to drive the strip and do like 30 rides. Mass exposure, And my dad calls me about 2 hours before I'm about ready to go out. I'm just getting a shower. And he says, look, I want to talk to you. And he says, we don't want you driving Uber. And I said, well, Dad, I'm fucked. I need money. You know what I'm saying? We need rent. And he says, I talked it over with your mother, and we decided that we want to support you in your poker. And I know what happened. My mother talked to my dad after me and my dad talked in Colorado, and she said, he's done. It's not like I'm some bum, She knows that that's how I've paid the most bills in my life, is through playing poker. So they're supporting me. So I don't have to worry about not having enough. And the idea is to build and build and build. And I'd like to have a goal by the end of the year to no longer be taking help from my dad, but who knows? Because the idea here is everything goes to the bankroll. All the wins, all the donations, all the subs, everything goes to bankroll. So I wish there was like an auto donation to ACR on Twitch, but there isn't, because that's like the best way to do it. But whatever, man. Everything's appreciated, nothing's asked for, and nothing's expected. So that's where I'm at. So I decided to rebrand the channel. I changed the name because Flip was also a different kind of thing. ! Name, if you want to read about that. It's just a couple paragraphs. But yeah, so I went with Qui-Gon Broke because I figured if I'm going to do it, I want it to be something I love. And the thing that I love most in this world is Star Wars. I love every bit of it. I never get sick of it. There was a time when I thought, I better stop watching the movies and reading so much because I'm going to get burnt out on Star Wars. And then I had the same thought in the same day. You know what? If I do, I do, but I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can for now. That was before I moved to Vegas, which was 2005, and I still haven't gotten tired of it. It's just my favorite thing in the world. And I live my life by it. There's a lot of philosophy that I've translated into my own religion. I quote the movies, and I look at loss and pain in the same ways that the philosophies are. And so I said, you know what? I'm going with Qui-Gon Broke because Qui-Gon Jinn was one of my favorite Jedi, not just from the movies, but also from some of the non-canon books and stuff. And Qui-Gon Broke. I've gone broke, man. So you guys are going to either see me stay broke or save my family's life. My life as me and my wife, and ! Family for that. So that's where that's at. And yeah, I don't mind telling the story every time now. I'll write up some kind of blurb, so that it's more concise. But, at this point, my main thing is every morning at 11:30, by 11:30, because I did it early today. I wanted to start early. But every morning at 11:30, daily, every day, I'm doing a no-delay stream so you guys can, talk to me. And we'll just do what I do in the morning playing poker full-time, which is I'll review hands from the day before, just things I want to reinforce to myself going into that day. And then we'll do some study. And normally I would do study like on my own, and it's like course stuff, and I'm running numbers, and it's very complicated. but I've kind of come to liking doing the poker quizzes on Jonathan Little's poker coaching site, pokercoaching.com, which I pay for a membership yearly. It's expensive, but honestly, it's well worth the money, and it's a fuck of a lot cheaper than any other training sites out there. And it's not just Jonathan Little; it's like 30 coaches, and they all put in different pieces of the pie. Matt Affleck is one of the coaches; he's one of the best. Faraz Jaka is unbelievable. Jonathan Little, I think, is one of the best coaches. He speaks very concisely, so people, it's hard. Some people find it hard to listen to perfectly. It speaks perfectly to my brain. So I really like it. So we're gonna just do hand reviews now, and like I said, I'll stop and talk and bullshit, and we'll do hand quizzes after. But we're gonna do an all grips edition of hand quizzes. Let's go on to the next one here. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, so there's no small blind here. Pocket nines. We're gonna go ahead and raise it up standard. I see a call. 3 overcards, flushy, straighty. We're going to go ahead and bet standard C-bet. It's a little bigger because if I had ace king here, I wouldn't just bet like 2.2, 1/3 pot. I would bet a little bigger because I want to, make it a little harder for you to call, which this isn't like betting half pot. I'm saying? Betting half pot just looks weak as shit. Betting 2/3 looks like, 2 pairs, trips. So I think if I had ace king, I would kind of bet this. That's where I was kind of putting my head. We do see a call, 6 of hearts on the turn. I got decided to go ahead and check. It checks back. The river comes off a 4. And at this point, it's like if I had ace king with the ace of hearts, I would have bet the flop that way. Many times I would have checked the turn, right, to not get blown off a heart draw if I needed it, plus to pot control. And then I would value bet the river, and that's exactly what I did. We go for a 2/3 pot value bet. He folds. We were assuredly beat. I don't know the hand that calls the flop that doesn't beat us. Like, it doesn't have to be a king, but it's probably like all queens, right? So what are the hands that have queens in them? Queen 10, queen jack. You know what I'm saying? They have a pair that beats us. And this is another example of you should have the best hand. This guy doesn't expect to win. When he doesn't expect to win, don't let him. Bet. You know what I'm saying? You have to take it down. And I don't have a lot of chips, and he has a lot of chips, so he's more likely to be on a draw, right? A little something there for you, too. He's got a ton of chips. He could just have, like, 10-9, right, and be calling my raises pre-flop because he's got, like, fucking monstrous chips. Why am I going to let him win with third pair? Bet again. He might be playing loose, but he's not going to be playing stupid, right? So, let's see here. Oh, I lost this one. I remember this one. So we see a raise, 2 big blinds. I make the call. Flop comes off. It's not good for me usually. Player bet's so small that I decided that he was telegraphing his weakness. So I went ahead and called him to float the flop. I checked the turn. He bets super small again. Now I make the big check raise. I would do this with all 2 pairs. I would do this with all sets. I would do this with queen jack, a lot of draws and all like that. He took a very long time. To call here. And that to me said he has a draw. Not just a draw, but he has the draw. I started to say it on stream, but then the river came off and I stopped the sentence. You can hear me on stream say, yeah, that's kind of the way I would expect him to react if he has like queen jack of diamonds. And I said queen jack of and then the river came off. He made the call after this long thing. Bink. So if he has queen jack of diamonds, he just made a fucking royal on us, right? Like, it's very unlikely, but obviously queen jack offsuit too, any flush draw too. But I just said it out loud and I felt like he had it. So I took a while and then I was like, well, I have to bet on the off chance that he has an ace high, like ace queen, right? That's calling, or, he called with a gut shot or something and now he's got top pair. So I'm not going to get any information by checking, because even if he overbet jams, it's so insane to try to tell if it's a bullshit or whatever. So I went for what I would do standard in this situation. I went ahead and pulled the trigger anyway. I did go 2/3 instead of normally my move here after the float check raise would be to bet like 22, 24. I went with a standard 2/3 pot bet here, and he auto jammed. So we folded, and I hope Poker Tracker shows the hand because he showed it. Yeah, made the royal. How you like that? I think we lost the minimum playing a pure move. I mean, he just flopped the world draw, right? So if we had raised on the flop, we would have gotten away for cheaper. But I think this is a good example of how you float, check, raise, turn, the kind of hands that continue, and then you kind of have to follow through in the river. But we didn't lose that much on this move, and I like the way I played it. And here's the other thing. Here's something to remember. I put 18. What is it? I put 18 out here. The raise was for 21 more blinds, right? Okay, so look at this pot. There's 40, my 19, so that's 49, 59, plus this, that's like 66, 86 blinds. There's 86 blinds in the pot, and I have to call like so many times. Like, you know, it would have been one of those things. I would have snap folded anyway. Like, even to not see it, right? I'm saying, like, just to see it if I was right, it wouldn't cost me that much, but I just snap folded it. Obviously, I didn't have a winner. I had deuce tray, but it's one of those things where people will call here to see it. But luckily, he was nice enough to show us because he made a royal and he can go rub his penis on the walls and feel real good about it. But it was just a funny one where the move is sound if he didn't hit the absolute gin card, right? Like if a diamond doesn't come off or an ace or a 9 doesn't come off, we win. Like he can make queen jack there. You know what I'm saying? He can make a queen or a jack on the river. We're going to bet and still win. You know what I'm saying? He just happened to have all the outs. So it's good to be aware of that stuff, and it was just funny the way it played out. Let's see here. What's up, Rec? How you doing, man? So we see 2.5 blind opens, standard. 3-3 Kang, three-way pot, not the greatest of flops for our hands. So we're gonna check. You know, I don't think I'm giving up yet, but we're gonna check it around. There's no reason to c-bet because if somebody else has a king, they're not gonna fold, and if they don't have a king, we might get bluffed at for value. So we see a check on the turn. We're gonna go ahead and bet. Now this is it's a more standard bet. You know, it's about 1/3 of the pot. You know, this is like a delayed c-bet, and we just took it down. And it's just good to include these things because there's no value in betting the flop here. Right, if we bet and get called, we kind of have to give up with our jacks, and then we're easily bluffable. And if a guy here has like 9, 10 of clubs, you know, or even, you know, ace king of clubs or ace queen of clubs, fuck it, let's give him a good hand. You know, if he just smooth calls us so he doesn't get blown off the draw in position, and then we just check the flop, check the turn, he can kind of, you know, or if we check the flop, and you know, ever checks around and then check the turn, or he can pretty much bet anything and win. But let's say on the flop, we bet into that ace-queen, right? He's going to call. Are we going to barrel the turn here on one of the worst boards for us? No. We're going to check. And then he's going to bet, and we're just going to give up the best hand. So I think checking the flop, betting the turn, when you see the overcard in a multi-way pot is kind of powerful. Especially since we didn't go crazy, right? We didn't bet too much. Here's a fun one. There's no small blind. And we see a min raise, and we go ahead and call. Flop comes off, you know, pretty nothing. It checks around, or it checks to this guy. He bets super small. This is like 20% pot. This is the dumbest bet I've ever seen. I go ahead and call. The other player calls as well. 9 on the turn, it goes check, check, check around. And now I did the very classic blocker bet. This isn't a bluff. This bet was sized to look like I was blocking, meaning I have a 9, okay? Or I have a jack. And I would like to get to showdown, right? So if I check, somebody could try to bluff at the flush, or somebody could try to represent a 9. If I have a jack, I kind of have to fold. So this bet is blocking. It's like, you got to have something to raise here, bro. Because I could have totally checked and called with a 9 and then have a fucking tripped out and then filled up on the river. So you kind of can't raise me here unless you have a monster. It's just a bad board for it. Like, you have to have at least a flush to raise me, and a lot of players won't. And we see the fold. And I think it's just a great example of exploitative play in multi-way pots. Like, that small bet meant nothing. It meant he wanted to go to showdown. I wouldn't be surprised if this player had like 6-7 or deuce tray. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have been surprised at all because, you know, he would want to get to the showdown. He could have had a hand like 8-7 also for a gut shot. But I think most likely it's like 6-7. The open ender. You know what I'm saying? And again, like, you know, that's another one where the board run out is just so bad for everybody that the guy who's most likely to have something is the guy who put no money into the pot, right? Like, I was in the blind. It was one big blind to win 5. I could have 9-5 and just have a full house, right? And just say, fuck it, and just called it because I got a good price. People do that all the time. It's a mistake, but people do it. I'm trying not to do it, but at the level I play at, you kind of have to because you get paid off so well. And you can play moves like this. I'm playing King 8. This isn't a good hand, but I have the move. Ace 9 suited. We raise out of first. It goes all the way around to the big blind, and he calls, so that's nice. We bought position in first position. We see an ace. We're going to go ahead and check back just because there's no reason to bet. This player then bets half pot. This is an awful bet. Like I said, it doesn't do anything. I do this when I'm trying to get called. He's doing this trying to bluff. I know this. I go ahead and call. The river comes off and he checks. And we're going to go ahead and bet. And notice I'm using a very similar sizing. Like, if I was polarizing this bet, I would have gone for 5, you know, like around 30-40% pot. I would have gone for like 4 or 5, or I would have gone for like 9 or 10, right? So, like, polarized. This bet, it's right in the middle. You know what I'm saying? So if I went 5 here or, you know, 10 here, right in the middle is 7.5. So I split the difference, and it gets you a call every time because it's a bad bet. Now he's going to hero call me with any pair. That's the idea here. But he folded, and I just think this is one that it's great to not bet this flop, right? Because I raised out of first. I should have an ace a lot. So why bet? You know what I'm saying? And he's defending. My ace isn't the greatest. When he checks and it checks through on the turn, or on the flop, and he bets the turn, it checks through to the turn, and he bets this weak-ass bet, we've now made some value versus a hand that we're not afraid of at all. And then when he checks the river, he's ever checking anything that beats us? I don't think so, man. So I think betting is fine. I even made the best bet, I think, to get called. I think betting less here doesn't get called more often. I think this bet gets called the most, that dumb bet. You know what I'm saying? 6-7 offsuit, always fun. In the big blind again. A lot of big blind play here. So we're calling, obviously. You know, there's 2, 4, 5.5, 6.5. We're getting 6.5 to 1. We obviously have enough equity to play. Gutty for you, buddy. It checks to the cutoff, who was the original opener, and he bets micro. Like his standard C-bet here, which I would fold to, honestly, because of the spade draw, should be right around 2.5, 3 big blinds. 2.75. Somewhere around there. Even 3, I think, is still standard because of it's a 3-way pot. I kind of fold. Like, because, you know, I'm kind of looking for the gut shot or a pair. I don't know if the pair is going to be good, plus all the spades. And we're so deep, you know what I'm saying? Like, this was later in the day, and I'm deep. So I kind of would fold here, standard. But he bets so micro that it's like, what can I do? You're actually betting less than it cost me pre-flop. And the turn comes off, and I pick up the open-ender equity. And obviously we're checking, and he checks back, and it looks like nothing. And on the river, we just bet, you know, the 3/4 pot bet, you know, 70%. For value, because it looks like a 9. It just always looks like a 9, right? And he's going to have a hand that beats us but can't call. So he can have a hand like ace-king, ace-queen. He can have hands like pocket 7s, pocket 6s. Pocket 8s is in there, but I think you're a little stickier with that. He could even, believe it or not, he could even have pocket 10s. Some players play bad enough where they go, oh, this guy was in the big blind, he must have a 9. Yeah, it's very likely. He defined his hand poorly. I think this is one where, obviously, our only way to win is to bet, but he's never going to have a value hand. So you don't want to just give pots away, right? Like, what if he has king, queen, and we just let him have the pot? That's fucking stupid. Jack 9 suited in the big blind again. 2.5 out of second position. We go ahead and defend. We see a jack and an ace and an 8 on the flop. This is that bad bet once again. It's about half pot. It was done instantaneously, so I went ahead and floated it. The turn comes off a 6. Player just automatically gives up. And here's the problem with that. This is why the bet is a bad bet. It tells you a lot of information for free, basically, because he made that half pot bet and not automatically. He's like, okay, flop hit, I do this. If the guy doesn't have an ace, he can't call me. But then he gets called, and it's like, if you have queens here, you're kind of fucked, right, because of the size of your bet. And we checked, and he checked back. There really wasn't much reason to keep betting. But, he just opened badly, c-bet badly. Like, if he had c-bet standard on the flop, I'm going to call. Because I have a jack. That's fine. But then on the turn, if he bets again and bets properly, 2/3 pot or so, I'm probably giving it up, man. Like, without a 10, 9, jack, 7, or queen turn, I'm probably just going to, give it up because there's not a lot going on for me, But no, he just took this one stupid little, this is what I do when flops hit bet, with no thought behind it, and it was an easy call. And the check on the river, we get value from, because if he bets the river here for like honestly, even like 2/3 pot, I'm calling, because it just doesn't look like an ace. It looks like exactly what it is. It looks like a busted draw that was, shitty in the first place. I probably wouldn't have put him on king 10. I probably would have put him on something like, I don't know, like a king queen with diamonds, so he checks the turn to slow down on the bluff because he doesn't want to get blown off the equity. This one's a little interesting. We see a raise, and we go ahead and just call on the button. We could 3-bet a lot, but this player was very active, and he did a lot of weird things that paid off because he made the nuts, like 3 hands in a row, so now he's got just like monstrous chips. Flop comes off with a king on it. We see this player lead. The big blind leads for 8.5 for full pot. So this dude calls. I decide to call because this seems fishy as shit, and this guy does weird shit. So I just call to see what happens. Now this player completely rips it. This dude folds, and I of course call because this just looks like utter trash. And he had a gut shot and second pair and tripped out on me. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish by betting. I never felt like I was beat because he was betting too big. Like, this flop bet of full pot into 3 players should be scary. It's not. This is the weakest shit in the world. I thought worst case scenario I was up against 10 jack, or not 10 jack, like a king that was suited with a flush draw. But I really didn't feel like that was a scenario I made on the turn, because obviously you can't have that on the flop. I guess you could have like the ace 10 with the ace of clubs sometimes, but leading out is just ridiculous. So it's just funny to me. And then he just overbet jams the turn, and it's just like, why would I be afraid of this? Are you ever doing this with 2 pair? Even with 2 pair, even if you were totally afraid, you would have just checked to the pre-flop raiser, let him bet, let me call, and then check raise. Like, this is the dumbest fucking way to play this hand ever. Like, you're not representing anything. And it's just funny that after all the money went in, he hit the 10. He had 3 outs clean, and that was it, man. He could hit a jack to chop. That was it. But, I like the way I played it. It did take a long time in game because I was thinking it over. But I eventually came to the right decision that his bets just didn't make sense. So we'll min open out of first with the kings. We get called in the big blind and 10-10-3. We're at 16 blinds. And the interesting part here, you'll see, player checks. We go ahead and bet anyway. He min raises, and we jam because we're so unlikely to have a 10 in this scenario. But he's not very likely to have one either. So I think it's the kind of thing where we'd rather get the money in as soon as possible, because if he sees a safe flop for pocket fives, he's good, but he knows I'm not going to do that with a 10. The fact of the matter is, I absolutely would have done that with a 10, but I'm a different player than him. And I'm never thinking he has a 10. I'll bet after this hand was over, he was like, how the fuck do you get it in there with kings with those two 10s on the board? Well, same way you got it in with 5s, bro. I know that you don't have a 10 very often. 40 to 1 shot, if you're going to break me with kings, that's cool, but I only have 16 blinds to start the hand. Long as I don't see an ace, you really can't bluff me. Pocket queens. A lot of early position play this one. I like it. Min raise, get called. Flop the world. This is one of the rare instances where I will not bet a set because what is he going to have to call me? Like, I even said it when we were streaming, I was like, so what flop do you want for pocket queens to guarantee your win? And it's queen 7 deuce. And it's like right there. So he's got like 2% equity on average. It's hilarious. So I did check this one. 4 comes on the turn. He bets super small. I go ahead and raise because now I feel like he can have a lot of draws. We can get a lot of money in right here. He can also have like 2 pairs that are weird now, like deuce 4, 7 4, because he was in the blind, right? He can even have like 2 pairs with a queen. You know what I'm saying? So he goes ahead and calls it. A 5 on the river is a great bluffing card for him. He didn't take it. I decided just to go ahead and bet really big size. Like, this is to the top end of my value betting range because it can look bluffy. I thought about over betting it and betting like 25 blinds into this 18 big blind pot, but then I was like, and thinking back, I think that's better actually, because especially if he has 34 blinds and I bet 25, I think it looks even bluffier because we get the escape hatch where if he check jams on us, we can save face by folding, right? If we're bluffing. Nobody gets to see our hand. But I wanted the call more than that, and I felt like it was either that choice or this choice, and I felt like this bet gets called far more often. So I went ahead and bet this, and he does raise all in, which obviously I'm never folding to, and he ends up showing us the Jack 7 third pair. So essentially what we did was convince him to bluff at us, which is what you want when you flop the world, right? His brain stopped thinking when he said on the flop, this guy doesn't have a queen because he checked, right? Then when the turn came off and he bet small to like try to get to showdown, that's what this bet is. He wants a cheaper showdown with a 7, but he's not going to respond to any of the information that he gets. So I raise sizably, and he decides that I must have picked up a flush draw. Like, he's filling the narrative in his head of how he wins here. So he calls because he knows I'm not going to fold. If he jams, I'm not folding my flush draw, right? That's what he knows, even though he's wrong. And then the river comes off, and there's no flush draw. It's clean for him. He checks, and he's just looking for an excuse to get the money in at this point. And this bet just looks like a bluff. It looks like I'm betting enough to bluff. And he goes ahead and jams in on me because, I don't know, like, if I'm bluffing, why don't you just call, bro? Like, there's no reason to raise if you think a guy's bluffing, you're not going to raise him because he can't call, right? Any hand I can call with beats Jack 7, bro. So if I am bluffing, are you trying to bluff me off of a queen? Like, do I have a queen that I'm bluffing? Like, is that a bluff? I don't think so, man. Like, unless I have, like, ace 7, there's no reason, but I wouldn't have bet. So I don't know what his deal is. It's one of those ones, I just want to stick it in your face. But he turned his hand into a bluff that he didn't need to. But I really think he's doing this for value. Like, he thinks I can't call. And it's just one of those great ones where we really convinced him. And I really enjoyed playing this hand. And it's just a very creative way of showing how you get the max with the max. Like, I had the most you could have of this board. Let's see here. Pocket jacks. Yeah, I remember this one. This is fun. I 3-bet a first position opener just because of our stack sizes. I didn't want these players 3-betting and making it awkward. So he jams and I just fold. I think it's important to include some of these. You do have to have a 3-bet folding range, right? So player opens in first. Usually that should be a strong hand, but I believe this was a $3 buy-in tournament, so it doesn't always have to be. And I make a 3-bet to freeze these players. I don't want them playing like unless they're gonna get all the money in. Like I didn't want to call and then have the button make it 7 big blinds, because then like what? I'm kind of flying blind. Then this guy folds, and then what? I jam the jacks. Like I don't know. I also didn't want the big blind to squeeze, so I like the 3 bet. And the guy jams in, and yeah, it's only 27 blinds to call, but we were deep in this tournament, and it was too much to risk. And I had a good stack. I had a good stack going. I was near the, right above the middle. So I thought it was a good fold. So it's important to include some of these. They're not all crazy, right? But you do have to have a 3 bet folding range. And here's the thing: I don't know he has queens or better when I'm folding the jacks. I just know that my jacks aren't crushing. Like I know best case scenario, I'm up against ace king or ace queen, and that's a race. And this was just too many chips to race against. Now, by the numbers, I should have raced it. If he shows me ace king, if he shows it to me, I have to call by the numbers. This is where that theory differs. Talk to Phil Hellmuth, the winningest World Series of Poker tournament player of all time, most cashes, most bracelets. He'll tell you that no matter how good the pot odds are, if you're out of the tournament, you're out of the tournament. So he makes some really crazy folds that people like disagree with. I do disagree with this fold mathematically, but in game, I agree with it. I think sometimes you just know you're beat. Like the price doesn't matter. Like calling 27 big blinds here to win, what was it? 36, let's see here, 39, like 41, 2.5. Calling 27 big blinds to win 42.5. Here's what the math looks like, right? So we have to call, well, let's see here. Let's see exactly. 0.61 minus our bet of 6.43. So we'd have to call 27.18, okay? And there is currently 33.61 plus our bet of 6.43 plus the blinds and antes. So that's what? 1.5 for the blinds plus 0.96 for the antes. So to win 42.5 blinds, right, we have to call, what do we say, 18? Or no, 27.18. So let's just make it easy. 27.2 divided by 42.50. So we need to win 64%, or we need to have at least 64% equity. Versus ace king, we have 55%. So we would definitely take the raise, right? Because we're getting a better price. I don't know that I'm up against ace king though. The guy can have queens, kings, and aces, right? I don't have, Flopzilla's been giving me problems, but I'd run it for you. But I guarantee if this range here of jamming is 9s plus and ace king, ace queen, ace jack suited, and all like that, I guarantee you we don't have enough to call. We have enough to call, but in game we're just going to be screwed. Versus a range of ace king, ace queen, aces, kings, queens, we're just fucked. Like, and that's what this could be, definitely. So I like just folding and saying, you know what, there's better spots, man. All right, aces is the last hand we're reviewing. Why are aces on here? This shouldn't be that exciting. So we see a raise. We make a 3-bet. At this point in the tournament, it is standard. It's a little smaller than early, but you can see how small the stacks are. So your opens obviously are only 2 now, so your 3-bets are going to be smaller as well. This player calls me. Oh, I remember this one. We flop the world, and we decide to check back. 10 on the turn. He makes the C-bet play, which this isn't a bad bet. This is an okay bet. This is a regular C-bet. So I went ahead and raised it because I felt like he had a good value hand. He can also have draws. So I went ahead and just raised him right here. Like if he had bet half pot, I would have just called. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't feel like he has much. But I felt like he had a strong value hand. So I went ahead and called him. And the river comes off at 10. And he just goes ahead and donk jams everything. And I went ahead and called. And the dude had queen 9, which is hilarious to me that he did that with a draw. So his standard bet was like, I felt like he had something good, like maybe he had a 10 or 2 pair or something. But it's also the other way too, where now he's betting on the draw, and he called, and then he missed the draw and ripped on us. And obviously I'm never folding, but to me it was just interesting that this player decided to play it that way. And I give him credit, man, because when this river comes off, you're basically saying you have a 10, right? And it's very hard to call you, even with an ace. And he doesn't think I'm going to have an ace much of the time because we check the flop. So even if I checked like ace jack on this flop for pot control, it's kind of hard to call this bet on the river, right? I mean, I would, but I'm not loving it. So I think that's where that's at. So we went kind of long, man. Yeah, it's been about an hour. Let's do one Gripsed hand, and then we'll go from there and see what I want to do. I am gonna play today. I'm not sure what yet, but I'm getting a little loopy because I need to eat. Like my blood sugar's low. So let's see, Gripsed, 2,500 tournament. I want to find something that's good. This is the Falls View tournament that he did really well in. Find me a cash game hand for Mr. Gripsed. 1-3 no limit. A reasonable hand for us to study because this is near the levels we play. $600 buy-in, so 200 big blinds under the gun with pocket jacks. Let's see what Gripsed has to say. I want to make sure you guys hear it, so let me turn this on. There we go. Let's see it, Gripsed.
Hello everyone, Evan Jarvis here for PokerCoaching.com. Today we are reviewing a 1-3 no limit hold'em hand that I played in a private game.
Ooh.
I'm not a huge advocate of private games, but sometimes your friends invite you to play. They say the rake's reasonable, the game is incredibly good. It typically is.
I have never played in a private game. I've dealt them when I was in Florida, when I was just a poker dealer. And I wasn't playing full-time because you couldn't really in Florida unless you were online. Never again. Never again. It was Florida, so things like drug dealers, hookers, bankers all sitting together, cool. But I was the only one to make it out of there with money that night. The guy didn't pay his players. He stalled them. I got paid, and because I'm a loud, obnoxious asshole, he paid me quick, and he paid me my money, and I left. The next day, I found out he paid none of the players, and my money wasn't much, right? It was just like I was getting part of the rake every pot, so that was just raked right to me, and I took that, and that was the most money, and I took it, and he cashed me out, but then my actual fee, he didn't want to pay me. And he said, just give me till tomorrow. And I was like, no, dude. And then he was like, well, I can cash you out tomorrow. And I was like, no, you're cashing me out right now, or I will burn this motherfucker down. Because I needed the money. And I just started to get loud. And he's like, all right, dude, it's cool. I just thought we were cool. And I'm like, we're not cool. I don't fucking know you. And that's a very Florida thing to say. We're not cool. I don't know you. To say that to somebody who you've known since you were 5 years old.
Is pretty good, but still personally I prefer to play online or in casinos than I do in private games because I think there's a lot of excess risk associated them, and as you know, professional or aspiring professional poker players, it is our job to mitigate risk as much as possible. Anyway, we find ourselves in the game where we don't have too much of reads except that the player on the cutoff has got stacked a couple times. He's not having the best day, and we have a pair of red jacks under the button. Action is on you. What should you do? Should you fold, call, raise to 10, or raise to 15?
It is a private game, so it's probably going to play higher, but I think we just go with a standard open under the gun of raising to 10. You do raise bigger live than online. Online, your open here can be, 7, but putting that out, at a live game is just like, you just did nothing. You just said, I don't want to limp. So you would make it 10. You would go 3x, I think, minimum. At one up to like 5-10, you're going to open for 3x plus. That doesn't change because the money has to mean something in people's faces live. So $10.
Folding here, certainly out of the question. I know that a lot of people say there are no right way to play pocket jacks, but you as poker coaching member know that there are many right ways to play pocket jacks, and the one wrong way to fold them for sure is to fold them in an unopened pot under the gun. So we're not going to be doing that. Calling doesn't have a ton of merit either unless the game is playing crazy aggressive. maybe you could justify limping in, but then maybe go for a limp re-raise or limp call depending on the action. But in most games, that's not going to be the play. Between raising to 10 and raising to 15, both of them perfect plays. Totally depends on how the game is playing. This particular game, the standard size was 10, so that's what we did.
Yeah, like if they're opening standard in this game to 12, you know what I'm saying? Because people are throwing out 3 chips instead of 2, or 4 chips instead of 3, or 2, excuse me, then you would open to 12. You kind of have to go with game flow. I've been in games where players weren't opening enough, and I started raising the standard open and playing more pots. And I did this. I remember it was at a 1-2, and players were making it 5 to open. And I decided I was just going to go immediately to 9. And when I did that, players started coming up, and they started opening to 7 and 8 instead of 5. And then when it got to 8, I started going with 8 as the standard. And within about a half an hour, I changed the standard open to $8, which made the table tighten up. Now everybody wasn't flopping everything because they were like, well, I can't open this hand for 8. They didn't realize it didn't matter much. You had to play with game flow, and you're actually able to control that based on the size of your opens and how frequently you do it.
Make it 10 and get 1, 2, 3 calls. Does this look like a private game to you? Yeah, me too. And then a squeeze from the stuck punter who makes it 60 on the button. You fold from the small blind, a classic cold call from the big blind. Don't fear that this is only like pocket queens or something. This is a private game. The ranges are extremely wide. And action is back on you. There's 151 in the middle, 300 behind. What should you do? Should you fold, call, re-raise to 150, or rip it all in?
Okay. So all these players have about $300. We have the most with 600, right? They're all about 100 big blinds. Okay? The punter, who is obviously our target in this hand, started the hand with exactly 100 blinds. So it's 100 big blind effective poker. If we make it 150, we are going to get called by everybody behind because they're going to say there's 120, 30, 40, 150 here. So we're gonna either have to go all in or fold. I don't think we have a choice because the punter was the squeezer. He made a decent squeeze, but once this call comes in, now its hand is downgraded. So we're going to make everybody play for their whole stack. It's very different to call a open under the gun, which is kind of bad, for $10 than it is to now have to call a 4-bet for your whole stack. So I think the only move here is all in. We're targeting the punter. He could be doing this with pocket anythings and pairs, and we're just going to race with him for 100 big blinds. Pretty standard. And the player behind really can't call this player.
In my eyes, it's between 2 options, and it really depends on your read of the punter and just how wide he's willing to get it in. If you're facing someone who is so tilted that they are ready to just call off with suited ace or any pocket pair, you could justify moving all in here, getting all the money in pre-flop, and getting it in as a big favorite.
I think what he's going to say is, if we make it 150, these players will fold out. It will go back to him, and the punter will jam. So then this player is not cold calling a 3-bet like he did. He's now calling off a 5-bet pot. So we probably get more folds out of this player. So I'm already seeing that jamming might not be the best move. And here's the other thing. If he jams and this guy calls with 150 in, price-wise, we shouldn't call, or we should call, but maybe we can get a reading game and actually fold and save, the extra, $150. But we'll see.
A decent percentage of the time. The only issue with that is sometimes you're going to run into it, and also you're giving this person a chance to get unstuck on a coin flip a lot of the time, ace king, ace queen that he can call you with. And when you have someone who's stuck, when you have someone who's steaming, when you have someone who's craving action to try to bail them out of the situation of being down money in a poker game, the last thing you want to do is give them easy action. You want to make them work harder to get out of the hole because it's going to be more frustrating for them and they're going to be more likely to make mistakes. When you just go ahead and flip with them, you're giving them a chance to get out of the hole easily, and you're giving up your edge in doing so. So unless the guy is like steaming off the charts, calling is going to be the clear best play.
Really?
We can still play post.
The call. Yeah, I guess you don't want to 3-bet to 150, but I guess the call's pretty good because we can see a good flop and then get the money in. So I wasn't expecting the call because I just don't know if I like all these calls behind. I feel like this is going to be one where he's going to flop a jack, and it's going to be a little easier.
Post flop. Yes, we're out of position, but the stacked pot ratio is extremely shallow, so it's going to be pretty easy to play correctly. Basically on low boards, hope that the jacks are good enough, and on ace and king high boards, consider just letting them go.
It's a good way to protect your chips too.
We call, and the other players opt to fold. The other perk of calling is these players might come in as well, and we could potentially win a bigger pot.
I don't know if that's a perk.
But we don't need to worry about that. We have
jack.
the dream flop, jack high flop. We have the absolute nuts. 3 ways. About 2x pot remaining between us and the big blind, and 1x pot remaining between us and the dealer punter. Checks to us. What should you do? Should you check, lead out for 50, lead out for 100, go all in?
I mean, I feel like if the guy's a punter, he's going to be working for it, obviously. And he does have the lead pre-flop, so I'm not a fan of it, but we have all the board. Like, this is probably the best flop for us, so I'm just going to go ahead and check, man.
Now, most players are just going to check here as a default, and I agree that given the stacked pot ratio, that is the best play in this situation. But I wanted to put a quiz here to discuss the merits of getting a little tricky and getting a little unorthodox. If we move all in, we're getting called by those aces and kings, but we're folding out some hands that may bluff at this pot that have very little equity, just overcard type hands and so forth. Betting large, betting 100 will have a similar effect where we will get called by the hands that would bet anyway, but we'll fold out some hands that would take a shot at the pot. But betting 50, betting small is something that's interesting because if we go for a really small bet size here where the punter still has a lot of room to, potentially fold us out, he can risk about the size of the pot. He may still bluff with those unpaired cards and be more inclined to bluff for all of his chips than, say, half of his chips or a third of his chips because there's more money in the middle. See, when we check to him here, there's only 200. Maybe he fires a bluff of 100. But if we put 50 out here and he wants to bluff it, he's got to make it at least 150, and at that point he might as well go all in.
That's a good point.
Now, this particular board is one that he's probably going to fire a continuation bet on quite a bit. But were it more connected, say, jack of spades, 10 of clubs, 7 of spades, and there are many draws out there, flush draws, straight draws. If he doesn't have a piece of that board, he may just check back on that board. And in that case, it makes sense for us to lead out for a small amount because when he has an overpair, he's going to want to protect that overpair and he'll just move all in. And when he has, total air, total junk, that would have just checked back anyway, we give ourselves a chance to build the pot against the big blind while we still have the nuts and allow ourselves.
There's also a factor of when you bet that small bet, poker players used to do that very commonly to see where they were at. I never did that, and I still don't do it, and I refuse to do it because if you don't know where, TJ Cloutier said once in an interview, if you have to bet to know where you're at in the hand, you shouldn't be playing poker. You should know where you're at. Your bet is not going to do anything but throw off the other guy's rhythm, I believe. So, in this scenario, if the board was connected, like with a king on it, then yeah, leading for that to see where I'm at. Or let's say it was, jack 10, 7 with 2 spades. Then there's a lot of draws. I want to see where I'm at, and a guy with a open ender or whatever like that, he'll just jam the money in. So yeah, I could see that. I could see that, but I'm never gonna actually see where I'm at by betting, but I'm gonna make it look like that sometimes to get bluffed.
To charge him for his draws and get more information about his hand. Whereas if we check on a much more dangerous board and the punter just checks behind, now the big blind gets to see the turn for free, and we have fewer opportunities to build the pot and less information about the big blind's range. So I just put a quiz in here because I wanted to discuss that, but yes, in this particular spot, checking is clearly the best play. And our punter bets 125. Actions back on you. What should you do? Should you fold, call, or go all in?
I mean, he's only got 115 behind. If he's bluffing, we want to allow him to continue bluffing. I think we just call. I mean, it seems very simple, but I think we just call. If we go all in, I think the only hands that are calling us are over pairs, and he's supposedly playing loose because he's the punter, right? We're never folding. We've already decided, even if, like, you know, the 10 of spades comes off on the turn, the worst card for us, we're never folding. So just call.
If you selected fold, you should probably move on to another game because that just doesn't make any sense. But I know you didn't pick fold. I know you're putting chips in the middle. And given that he has less than 2x the bet remaining, he's pretty pot committed. We might as well just move all in.
Okay.
If he was a little bit deeper, say 250 behind, where he has enough stack behind that he could consider firing a bluff on the turn and still have some fold equity, we can just check call here and give him a chance to keep betting on later streets. But at this point, he's looking very committed to the hand. He's put in almost...
That's a good point. I mean, I guess you don't have to bet big when you don't have much behind to be pot committed. So, yeah, I see it. I don't know why this isn't updating. Sometimes the graphics a little behind. It's kind of weird. But, yeah, I mean, I guess he's just got that much money in. He's probably got, you know, he's probably got an overpair or a draw. So yeah,
almost 2/3 of his chips into the pot already. We know he's stuck. Stuck players don't tend to fold.
True.
I think even if he was bluffing here because he has
Plus
so
we
many
look
chips
like
in the
we have a
middle,
flush
he's
draw
probably
when
just
he
gonna
has
click call
like
anyway.
a pair of tens.
So shoving all in is the best play, with calling being a close second. If we are in position, calling's better. It's easier for us to get the chips in that way. But being out of position, we want to just get the money in now, not risk the turn going check. And you got the nuts. You clearly got a customer. Get the money in the middle, and that's what we do. Fortunately for us, it's just a classic cooler situation. We flop top set against an overpair, and he picks up a sweat on the turn but does not get there on the river. So we pick up a nice size pot, get a very nice result in this underground game as well. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be going back, but we're always happy to book a winning session. Anyway, this has been Evan Jarvis for PokerCoaching.com. I hope you enjoyed the quiz. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
And get stacking. You didn't say it. It's Grip's catchphrase, man. You got to get stacking. So, yeah, I think I'm going to call it there, man. I am fucking starving, bro. I'm going to come back here later. I'm probably going to start my day's play around 3, maybe 4. I feel like it's a later day. And, yeah, I feel good. Yesterday was fun. It's a Sunday. I don't really like playing on Sundays, but yesterday was good. There's a lot of great tournaments today. I think 4 o'clock sounds about right. And I'll see you guys then. Don't forget, we come every day at 11:30. Let me just look for somebody to host here for you. And is Lex on? Is Lex on? I don't think Lex is on. Let me check it out. If Lex is on, oh wait a minute, I gotta kill the mic there. You're gonna hear me in echo. If Lex is on, then we'll host him. I don't know if he is though. Yeah, he is. Cool. All right, cool. So we're gonna host Lex Veldhouse, and that'll be fun. Lex is a excellent streamer, excellent player. He's somebody we should all aspire to be in the poker world. Seems like a great guy too. You never hear any controversies about Lex. Lex. Why can't I spell your name, Lex? Wow, see, this is the dyslexia backs up on me sometimes. At Lex, Veldhuis. So yeah, so it's great seeing you guys. I'll see you in a few hours, man. Thanks for coming out. And we're gonna rate them.